আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আজকে আমরা এই যে রিসার্চ ম্যাথডোলজি কোর্সটাকে একটু রিভিউ দেয়া রিসার্চ ম্যাথডোলজি এবং সেই জায়গাটায় before starting to review, we have to understand the definition of research. আমরা সেটা ডিফাইন করতে চাচ্ছি। রিসার্চের যে বিষয়টা রিসার্চ এই মিলে হচ্ছে রিসার্চ, আপনারা জানেন, এবং সেই জায়গায় এই রিসার্চ শব্দটি এসছে একটি অত্যন্ত প্রাচীন ফ্রেঞ্চ ওয়ার্ড থেকে এবং এই ফ্রেঞ্চ ওয়ার্ডটি ছিল রিসার্চিয়ার, RECERCHIER, রিসার্চিয়ার। তৎকালীন সময়ে রিসার্চিয়ার যে শব্দটি ছিল সেটার আসলে মিনিংটা ছিল সার্চ এগেইন। সার্চ এগেইন মানে হচ্ছে পুনরায় খুঁজতে হবে। সুতরাং কোন একটা বিষয় আছে, এমন কোন বিষয় পুনরায় খুঁজে বের করার চেষ্টা করার নামই হচ্ছে রিসার্চ। এটি অত্যন্ত সিস্টেমেটিক ওয়েতে করতে হয়। সেখানে একটা স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সংজ্ঞা আছে, রিসার্চের একটি স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সংজ্ঞা আছে। If we define the research, we can say that research is a systematic approach. Obviously, this is a systematic approach because there are some steps, and obviously it's a scientific approach. So research is a scientific approach and systematic approach of answering a research question, solving a research problem, or generating new knowledge. That means the target of research is to find out some solution of some questions, or its purpose is to generate new knowledge. And obviously it will be done by step through a systematic and orderly collection, organization, and analysis of data, with an ultimate goal of making the findings of research useful in decision making. So we want to make a decision. We want to go to that decision, and for this decision we need some findings. What are the problems? We want to know about the problems, and for knowing about the problems, first we need some data. Research will collect these data. Research will collect the data from the field, and after collecting the data, it's possible to present the findings, and from the findings it's possible to make the recommendations for making the solution. So research obviously is a scientific method. Research is obviously a systematic method. There are lots of steps, and not lots of, there are some steps that should be maintained by the researcher. Without this, it's not possible to conduct a research. And when you will conduct a research, you have to remember that obviously there are some characteristics of research. If you want to conduct research, you need to understand the characteristics of different kinds of the characteristics of research. What are the characteristics? Characteristics is here sir live gula আসতেছে, okay, that's fine. Hriday Hussain sir live gula আসতেছে, okay. Characteristics. What are the characteristics of different research? There are some basic characteristics. The first characteristic is the research should focus on priority problems. That means you may have lots of problems, but you have to focus on a priority basis problem. Research will do such kinds of the research will focus on priority problems. Second characteristics you have to understand, you have to know, the research should be systematic. That means there are some steps. You have to do the research step by step. you should go to the chronological way. Third, third characteristic is the research should be logical. Illogical matter should not be addressed in research activities. It should be very much logical. The research should be reductive, means that uh, findings of one researcher should other researchers to prevent them from repeating the same research, because another or other researcher can conduct the research, and if it is duplicated, if it is repeated, it's not a research. So for avoiding this duplication, for avoiding the repetition, your research should be available, which is called reductive research should be reductive. And another characteristic is the research must be as much as cost effective as possible. Why? Because research requires some investments, some costings, some expenditures. If the expenditures is high, it's not possible to conduct the research. So it must be cost effective. So there are other characteristics of research. As the researcher, you have to understand these characteristics. When you will conduct a research, you should remember that there are some desirable qualities of a research. That means there are some qualities of which are desirable, which should be stay in such kind of in any kind of research. Now the question is, what are the desirable qualities of a research? The desirable qualities of the research, first quality is you purpose should be very much clear. In your research, you will say about your purpose, for which, for what objectives you are conducting the research. Because a good research must have its purpose clearly and unambiguously defined. If you have not make clear about your purpose of your research, it is not a quality research. Why? Because your purpose will lead you to the other activities of your research. So if you cannot define clearly your purpose of your research, perhaps your research will be unsuccessful, will go to the hell. So you should clearly define your purpose, define your objective of your research. Next quality is a research process should be detailed, because it should be understood by the readers, by the other researcher. So you will make a detail. You will make a detail about your research activities. Here there are some comments perhaps. Tanvir Mojumdar Shubha, Assalamu alaikum, sir. I think this class is very important for our course on research methodology. Lots of thanks. So, okay, thank you, Tanvir Mojumdar. Thank you very much. You are watching the lecture for this region. Thank you very much. And another quality is conclusion and recommendation should be justified. You will provide a conclusion, and obviously you will give some recommendations. But remember, your recommendation should be based on your findings, which is called justified. Justification of your research. If you provide some recommendations which are not relevant to your findings, to your research activity, it will not be justified. So your recommendation should be justified. And obviously there are some limitations in every research. You have conducted a research, but you did not mention the limitations. It's not a good research. We can say confidently that every research has some limitations. You should mention the limitations of your study. And when you conduct the research, you should maintain your ethics, which is called the consideration of ethical issues. A research design should always safeguard against causing mental and physical harm, not only to the participant, but also to those who belong to their organizations. If your research activities will hamper the interest of the participant or other participant or other parties or other individuals or organizations, it will be very much uh, a dangerous thing. You should maintain your ethics. You should consider the situation when you conduct research. You should not uh, go to the invasion of privacy of an individual or the organization. Uh, you should not hamper, you should not hit the dignity of the participants or anybody or any organization when you will conduct the research. So your ethical issues should be considered. Ethical issues should be addressed in your research activity. So these are the qualities of a good research, uh, obviously. And when you will conduct the research, there are some basic concepts and issues which must be understood by the researcher, interviewer, etc. Now the question is, what are the basic concepts and issues in research? There is some concept. The first proposition is the first idea, the first concept which are very much significant in conduct the research is proposition. Are about one or more variables, which is called the proposition. For example, as an example, crime rate. Crime rate in the city has gone up by 40% recently. Right. This is the proposition because this is a statement. Statement is a proposition actually. Uh, uh, Thank you, sir, for the review class. Thank you, thank you very much for listening me. Uh, this is the proposition. So we want to say that any statement in research, obviously in research, any statement about one or more variables will be called proposition. And this proposition may be univariate, bivariate, or multivariate. That means proposition from the viewpoint, from the sense of the research methodology, research, there are three kinds of the proposition: univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. What is univariate proposition? Univariate proposition actually has the relation of single variable. That means when your statement has only one variable, this statement will be called univariate proposition. And in case of the bivariate proposition, we can define that a bivariate proposition is one that relates two variables, while a proposition relating more than two variables is called multivariate proposition. That means when your proposition is related with one variable, it will be called univariate proposition. If your proposition is relevant to, related to two variables, it will be called bivariate proposition. But when your proposition is involved with more than two variables, it's called multivariate proposition. As an example, there is an